In this video, we're going to go over vendor payments and allocations and how to add expenses from the vendor balance history. So I have a property called 102 Main Street, and I have an expense called Handyman. Let's say we had 2 expenses for the month. I'll click on the calendar, select the date, enter in the amount. We'll say it's 100. Details, I'll add notes. I'll say that this is for a window repair. You can select a payment type, enter in a check reference number. I'll say that this is for John the handyman. I added him under vendor name. And let's say there was a second job. I'll click on record another payment. And I'll select the date. Let's say it was $50. I'll click on details, and I'll say that this was for a door repair. And again, I'll tie John the handyman under vendor name and save. So we can see there is a total of $150 in expenses. It says multi because there are multiple expenses here. Now let's say we want to pay John the vendor. We'll go under Vendors, Vendor Balance History. We have John the handyman, and we can see the $150 of expenses, 0 vendor payments, which is why the ending balance is appearing in red, because the software is telling me that I still need to pay the vendor. So I'll click on Record Vendor Payment at the bottom left, and here we can see the current balance is $150 minus the minimum balance. So if you need to keep a minimum balance for this vendor, you want to do that. You can add that under the vendor details. I don't have a minimum balance, which is why it's showing 0, and the suggested amount is $150. So if you do have a minimum balance, the system will automatically calculate the suggested amount for you, so that way you can still keep that minimum balance here. It will automatically enter in today's date, and I'll enter in the amount, $150. Next, details. You can add notes. You can select a payment type here. You can put in a check reference number. You can select a bank account. And you can also select a payment method. You can pay the vendor online through our online payment system. You can also print a physical check through the system. We support pre-printed checks and blank check stock. And we do have separate videos that go over both, and I'll link them in the description below. For the purpose of this video, I'll select Record Transaction Only. Next is allocation. So here, you can tell the system where this payment needs to go. So the system automatically allocated the $150 toward each expense. So remember, we had the $100 expense. Now it's showing $100 of the payment is going toward that expense. And earlier on the property worksheet, we also entered in $50 expense. Now it's showing this $150 payment. $50 of that is going towards this $50 expense. If you need to change the allocation, you can simply do that by updating the amounts here under the Allocate column. Okay, so now we can see the balance due is 0, and I'll click Save. And we can also see the ending balance on the vendor balance history is 0. Let's say there was a third repair that needs to be tied to this vendor, but I forgot to add it on the property worksheet. So you can do it here simply by clicking on Record Vendor Payment, Add Expense Transaction. So I'll select a property, select an expense row name. It will automatically select the category. It will put in today's date. I'll say that this was $30. And let's say that this was for a sink repair. Let's say I already paid the vendor for this sink repair. So I'm just going to check mark vendor payment done and save. Okay, so now we can see the expenses are $180 and the vendor payments total of $180. So here are the two separate checks. And if we go to the property worksheet, it also reflects the same thing, $180 of expenses. And we can see the three expenses listed here. This last one, the $30 one, we added that from the vendor balance history.